Trump's self-inflicted tariff crisis has sparked massive confusion, chaos, and raised serious questions about the competence of his administration. By making such drastic decisions, the president has not only ignited a global trade war, but also seems to be losing touch with the reality of the consequences his actions are causing. Trump expressed optimism, stating that everything was going very well after his tariff announcement, describing it as a surgical operation that would create a massive economic boom for the country. However, this outlook appears to be completely disconnected from reality. Following his decision, the financial markets experienced the worst day in 5 years, with $2.5 trillion wiped off the S&P index overnight, a number that clearly demonstrates the devastating effects of these tariffs. This was not a crisis triggered by external factors like a pandemic or natural disaster. It was the result of a deliberate decision made by a president. What makes matters worse is that the Trump administration has made it clear through multiple officials that these tariffs are not simply a negotiation tactic, but a long-term measure. The conflicting messages coming from Trump's inner circle only amplify the sense of confusion and lack of direction. The claim that these tariffs are reciprocal and intended as a fair adjustment of international burdens was quickly debunked as the tariffs failed to match a reasonable economic formula. Instead of being a well-thought-out solution, the tariffs appear to be an impulsive act with no solid planning or economic analysis behind them. The immediate impact of these tariffs has been nothing short of catastrophic, with rising prices expected for American consumers. Financial experts warn of a potential resurgence of inflation, contradicting Trump's promises during his re-election campaign, in which he vowed to lower the cost of everyday goods like food and housing. For example, in the auto industry, Stellantis had to suspend production at plants in Mexico and Canada, resulting in hundreds of layoffs. This is just the beginning, as more job losses and factory shutdowns seem inevitable if Trump's actions lead to an economic downturn. The enormous risk Trump is taking with the financial well-being of millions of people both in the U.S. and abroad mirrors the grand power grabs he has attempted since his second term began. His challenge to the rule of law with expansive claims of executive power, his dismantling of federal programs, and his harsh treatment of migrants reflect a reckless and destructive pattern that is now evident in his economic policies as well. The chaos within his administration and his disregard for traditional foreign policy have further alienated America's allies, particularly in Europe, and fractured global trust in the U.S. as a reliable partner. His approach seems to be based more on personal power than on coherent international cooperation, leaving the U.S. more isolated and vulnerable. Trump supporters may view these tariffs as a necessary step toward rebuilding American industry and protecting workers from unfair global trade practices. However, the disruptive nature of these policies could end up causing far more harm than good. By targeting foreign countries and imposing tariffs, Trump is creating significant economic pain for his own citizens, including rising costs of goods and services. His base may have supported these measures, but as the economic consequences begin to unfold, it remains to be seen whether they will still back him. The larger issue lies in how Trump supporters, along with the broader public, will react if the economy continues to worsen. If the immediate economic pain results in a prolonged downturn, it could erode the support he currently enjoys. The promise of long-term gains from a restructured global economy may not be enough to convince voters if they're struggling with the immediate fallout. Voters tend to be less patient when it comes to the cost of living, especially when the impacts of a policy are felt immediately. Trump's insistence that foreign nations will lower their prices to offset the tariffs and that the strength of the U.S. dollar will counteract price hikes could very well turn out to be wishful thinking. Past presidents who have ignored or dismissed the reality of public perception when it comes to the effects of their policies, like Lyndon Johnson during the Vietnam War or George W. Bush during the Iraq conflict, lost public trust. Trump risks following in their footsteps if he continues to insist on an economic reality that voters can see as false. In conclusion, if the tariff crisis deepens into a full-blown recession, and if the short-term pain that Trump claims will lead to long-term prosperity actually proves to be permanent, the political cost could be immense. Trump's ability to hold onto his base and maintain political support will be severely tested. His actions may have jeopardized not only the global economy, but also his own political future. The coming days will determine whether his gamble pays off or if it leads to widespread consequences that are impossible to reverse.